Welcome, everybody, to All-Star Insights, sponsored by Kids on First Foundation and Tuckahoe Sports. I'm your co-host, Chris McKnight, along with...
I'm Coach Rock, co-host, guys. Welcome to the show.
What's happening, Coach Rock? How you doing this morning?
Doing well. How are you?
Good, good. And today we have a really special guest with us. Someone I've known for a number of years, dating about almost 15, 16 years now, probably even more than that. Make us both feel old, but
time flies.
The former number one draft pick in Major League Baseball has had a professional career as a player for 12 years, and then has been a coach, a manager, a scout, has done it all in professional baseball. Kash Beauchamp. What's up, Kash?
What's up, Mac? How's it going, Rock? It's good to be with you guys today and talk a little baseball. It's, I drove from Missouri to Georgia. I'm on my way to Florida to scout an event down there. But I just want to warn everybody right now, between Olive Branch, Mississippi, and if you get to Olive Branch, Mississippi, turn around and go back, because it took me 4 hours to drive 40 miles, and I averaged 5 miles an hour on the worst roads I've ever been on in my life. And I've driven through Wyoming, Montana in the winter. Nothing I've ever seen like that. It was apocalyptic. So if you get to Olive Branch, Tennessee or Mississippi, you better prepare yourself, okay, for a rough go for about 4 hours. I'm just warning everybody right now, but I made it somehow.
Good. Glad that you made it, man.
Yeah.
Glad that you made it. So we're gonna kick right off here, Kash, and we're gonna talk about first the upbringing during your younger days. And I know, of course, the big influence, your dad, former major league player and coach, and we're gonna talk a little bit about that as well. But we've got a lot of stuff to pack in a little amount of time, so I want to jump, right into it. So
let's go.
Going into your youth baseball, what was one of the things that really stood out for you to tell yourself, hey, this is something that I'm pretty good at and I might want to pursue it?
Well, first of all, I grew up in a clubhouse. I mean, the first memories of my life were my mom and dad told me that my first words were never mama or dada or whatever. Usually it was ball. So that was the first word my dad said ever came out of my mouth, was ball. And so I can never remember not wanting to be a baseball player as long as I've been alive. And I can remember back to about my kindergarten days, a few things. But there's never been a day in my life that I did not want to follow in my father's footsteps and be a professional baseball player. That was my ultimate goal. I never knew right up until the time I got drafted if I was going to achieve that goal or not. So obviously I went to a tiny junior college in Oklahoma called Bacone College. And I tell kids all the time, if you're good enough, they will find you. And I just ask anybody out there if they've ever heard of Bacone College, Bacone, in Muskogee, Oklahoma. So kids that always complain about, I go to a small school, this, that, be better. You got to be better than everybody else. And if you're good enough, they will find you. So growing up in the game, obviously I was exposed to the game. My father had 19 years in the big leagues. I probably learned the F word before any other kid in America, being around a clubhouse. And I think I might have learned that word before I said mama and dada too, because I was just exposed, and I was a blessed kid. I got to grow up in locker rooms. I would sit in a locker room and look around, and there's Bob Gibson over here. There's Lou Brock over here. When my dad was with the Cardinals, I've got pictures sitting with Pete Rose, on the bench when I'm 5 years old, or about 8 years old, actually, on Family Day. It's a cherished picture of mine that I love. It's my favorite picture. My dad with the Mets. Willie Mays used my dad's bat to hit his last major league home run. I mean, I was a lucky, blessed kid to be exposed to some of the greats in the history of the game. And I gotta say, that was a major reason why, whatever success, that exposure to that lit the fire that allowed me to do what I had to do to get where I got.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't, being around all those guys and having that, opportunity, to do that. And for the listeners that don't know, Cash's dad, Jim, he played Major League Baseball. I knew him from just because of the Mets. I'm a huge Met fan and, being with the Mets, but he had probably his best coaching time when he was with the Braves, correct?
There's no doubt about it. Dad, Jim Beecham, my dad, he was, well, let me go back a little bit. First of all, he was the greatest athlete to ever come out of our little town in Oklahoma. And the Tulsa World, the newspaper in Tulsa, did an article, greatest athletes to come out of every town from Oklahoma. Of course, a guy that lived 20 miles up the road was a guy named Mickey Mantle from Commerce, Oklahoma. And I played against the Mantles, growing up. There's, Mike Mantle played football and basketball against him. He went on to play football at OU, recovered a fumble in the national championship game, actually in '85. Um, you know, my dad was really compared to Mickey Mantle, tools wise. Something people don't realize about my dad is he got a $50,000 signing bonus in 1957. And I believe at the time it might have been the highest signing bonus. I only got 65,000 to sign as a first overall pick in 1982. And there were two drafts back then. They'll say, well, no, Sean Dunston. There were two drafts then. There was a January draft and a June draft back then. And I was the first overall pick in the January draft. And I saw Sean Dunston's kid who played in indie ball, and we were talking one day. And I said, did you know your dad, he was the first overall pick in June. I said, we got $165,000 combined as our signing bonus. So we were born about 10 to 15 years too early, or else, I probably wouldn't be in indie ball now if I would have got 10 million to sign like these guys are getting now. But then again, if I'd have got that money, it would have robbed me. Maybe if I was on a golf course somewhere, I wouldn't be doing what I can do for this game. And that's where I'm at right now with my life, is teaching young players how to play this game right, especially from a hitting standpoint.
What are some non-negotiables, speaking of that you would actually reach out to our parents and to our youth in reference to certain principles that need to be followed when hitting that's really non-negotiable when it comes down to
Yeah.
mechanics?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you have to have good, solid, fundamental instruction. But whether you get it, it's got to come from somewhere. Okay. The blessing that I had in growing up in baseball is I was exposed, and you're not going to believe this, but my father did not coach me very often. I can only remember like three things that he told me about hitting that I was doing that I had to fix. One was my grip. The other one was my head position, because I was ducking my chin like that and looking out of the. He had to get my head squared away, and then he told me how to grip the bat. And the grip of the bat is something that nobody talks about anymore. And he told me how to have great head discipline. Okay. And then he let me go because he said, this is your career. It's not mine. He was not a helicopter parent. He really was. He was the opposite. I mean, he would show up at a game and you wouldn't even know he was there. You never heard him. He just sit there and he watched. He actually acted the way a parent is supposed to act at a youth sporting event. Okay. I look on YouTube and all the time there's fights. I mean, the crap that's going on now in youth sports is insane. Okay. So, yeah, I got a little bit of an issue with parental behavior in youth sports because, yeah, there was a 10-year period of my life where I ran a travel ball organization. Okay. And we were very strict with the way our parents had to behave. And it was non-negotiable. Okay. But to be exposed to all that major league and even minor league, where I really learned how to be a player is when my dad was managing in the minor leagues. I would play little league ball for 3 weeks. As soon as school was out, I would take off and go to my dad, and I was the bat boy for my dad's team. But I worked out with him when I was 12, 11, 12, 13. I got a lot of valuable experience I was taking ground balls at shortstop off AAA hitters' bats when I was 13. Yeah, I wore some. I cried on the field a lot. I took a bad hop to the collarbone one day and I laid off. My dad told me, you better suck it up because you're going to get hit worse than that before it's over. All those little things like that just led to my development and learning it. And then having a wonderful high school football coach, okay, that taught me how to be tough, taught me how to play with pain, taught me how to be a man, challenged me to be better than I was. Charlie Cooper was his name, and he was a very instrumental part of my career. I grew up under the Friday Night Lights era of Oklahoma, and we had every person in our little town in Oklahoma come to the game. There's 3,000 people at the game, and there's 2,000 people that live in our town. So your first goal was to make the high school starting football club, on the football team. But my high school football coach had a lot to do with me being able to, because injuries were a huge part of my career, unfortunately. I had 7 surgeries in the minor leagues. One of them was from a shoulder that I destroyed in a high school football game. Is my non-throwing shoulder, thank goodness. But I had 3 surgeries on that shoulder. That high school football coach taught me how to handle pain, taught me how to play, know the difference between pain and injury, taught me how to be tough. And I would have never made it if it wasn't for that. I truly believe if I did not play high school football, that set me up to handle the pain that I went through in my career. And I took the pain because there's nothing else I would rather do than play baseball or be a part of this great game.
So let's talk about now getting drafted. What's your mindset? You're the number 1 pick. You go into a minor league camp, the first spring training. What's your mindset going in?
A stupid, immature mindset, if you want to be very honest. I want to go back and I want to talk about Bryce Harper here real quick, who was the first overall pick. And you guys probably know this. Bryce had a lot of controversy in the minor leagues, right? Used to get kicked out of games all the time, used to throw fits. I mean, that was me. And I think it's the curse of the number 1 overall pick. I call it the number 1 overall pick syndrome, where you have to be very mature in your thinking to handle this. Okay. And I was not. I was 19 years old. Okay. But it was not even physically mature yet. I weighed 170 pounds then when I was 19 and was not physically mature like I was good. I was a projectable pick. Okay. I was not the finished product. I was projectable. I ran well. I defended well. That was the strength of my game, speed and defense. I hit good enough to where I was projectable if I put on the weight that I was eventually going to put on. And it came late. It came when I was about 25 years old. I was a very late physical developer. But the curse of the number 1 pick, okay, is that you feel like as an immature player that you have to justify that draft spot every at bat. Like if I'm not leading the league in hitting, if I'm not leading the league in home runs, if I'm not leading, I expected to win the triple crown in every league I played in because I was the first overall pick. I had to for my scout. I felt like obligated to Joe Ford, who scouted me, that I've got to lead the league in everything because this guy put his job on the line. That's just immature thinking, crazy thinking. So what does that do? That puts tremendous amounts of pressure on you that you self put on yourself. Now, when I grew up and I got matured, I started looking at, I used to go to the plate when I was immature and not thinking right, like, I've got to get a hit. I've got to get a hit. I got to get a hit. I got to get a hit, which is total bull crap. What you have to do as a young hitter is realize that you're trying to get 6 hits. When I started thinking like this, and this was a process of self maturation, I guess is the word, maturing. I taught myself this stuff through trial. I always say, thank God I was a number 1 pick because I got a lot of extra chances being a number 1 pick, and it gave me time to grow up. You know what I mean? If I would have acted this way as a non-drafted free agent, I would have probably got released after my first year. Thank God they had a whopping $65,000 invested in me, which was, I guess, decent money back then. Well, first of all, I think people have to understand I was 23 years old. I started the year off in AA. I hit 330 with 8 homers in the first month of the season. I was called to AAA. I immediately hit 6 more. So I was at like 15 home runs at the end of June. And I'd never hit for that kind of power before, you know? So like I could feel in my soul that this is it. You know what I mean? That I'm at the time of the injury, I was probably hitting 336 with 15 home runs in early July, late June. And back then, 20 home runs in the minor leagues was a lot. And I was gonna hit 20. I mean, unless I just completely forgot how to hit the last week of the season. And then we go into Toledo, Ohio to play a series against the Mud Hens. At the time, I was with the Syracuse Chiefs, AAA team for the Blue Jays. And you know, people that played with me or against me know that I was a certain type of player. I was very old school. I was very physical. I took a football mentality into baseball, which means I had to play the game fearless. The things I enjoyed breaking up double plays. Like when you could actually be a man on a baseball field and break up a double play like they did before they had what I call the sissy rules that were implemented into baseball and to protect their investments or whatever. But I'm an unashamed old school purist of the game. So all these new rules, they're all, pussified, if I could even use that word. I'm sorry if you can't, you can bleep that out. But, you know, I'm up at the plate and there's a 3-1 count. And Rick Dempsey's brother, Pat Dempsey, who is one of the senior long drive champions in golf now. Pat Dempsey was the catcher. There's a pitch about 2 feet outside. And I turned around at the umpire and I was headed to first base and he called it a strike. I said, Mike, I got that ball about a foot out. He goes, no, man, that was right there. I said, all right. And the catcher goes, shut your mouth and hit. He jumped into the conversation. I said, you talking to me? And then we almost got into it at the plate. And so I was pissed. All right. So the next pitch I walked. I was at first base and I was burning. I was red because this guy needs to that's between me and the umpire. A catcher doesn't need to jump in there. So I stole second the next pitch. And yeah, I talked a little smack his way. And then, of course, you know what happens next. There's a line drive base hit to right field. I'm sorry, but I wasn't even thinking about stopping at third base. And I might have run through a stop sign. I don't even know because I already made up my mind on second base. If there's a play at the plate, I'm blowing this guy's ass up. All right. Because that's how you get even. All right. Without fist fighting. You get even by playing the game hard. And you can get even with dudes on the field within the rules of the game at that time. Okay. So my whole thing, with my football background, I was not afraid to hit anybody. This guy's about 6'4", 240. All right. I'm rolling in about 6'3", 180. So I was a little bit of a mismatch here, but yeah, there was a play at the plate. I've got to say, I knocked this dude completely out of the dirt circle in a collision at home plate because I wasn't even thinking about sliding. All right. That's how you get even, right? But when I did that, I fractured my scapula. It was a freakish injury. It was called an avulsion fracture of the scapula, where I hit him so hard with my forearm coming up, all the ligaments ripped a piece of bone off my scapula. This is a true story, and I know people don't believe this, but my dad called me the next day and he said, what the hell happened? He goes, you know what? Pat Gillick, the general manager for the Blue Jays, called me the day before that game and told me we're putting Ron Shepard's or we're putting Ron Shepard on waivers and we're going to open up a spot. We're going to call Cash up. Okay. So I had no idea that I was that close to getting called up to the big leagues when I got in this collision at home plate. And so if I would have known I was going to go to the big leagues the next day, would I have run over that catcher? I would like to think that I probably wouldn't. But then again, the way I was wired back then, I might have still done the same thing. Who knows? I think after that, they had a rule in the organization. If this guy's going to the big leagues, he's not to play until he gets called up. And I think my situation caused that, if you want to know the truth.
Yeah.
So that was very disappointing. And I never got close to the big leagues after that. And I missed 6 weeks of that season, got into a horrible slump. I hit a home run my first at bat back. I hadn't hit in 3 weeks, it was 6 weeks. I hadn't hit. I took about 2 days of BP and they threw me in the game. I hit a homer in my first at bat. And I think it's the worst thing that ever happened to me because I started trying to pull and launch stuff. And that was really not my game. My home runs came by trying to hit doubles. And all of a sudden, I thought I was a power hitter. And I started trying to hit home runs. And I went into one of the worst slumps of my career. And it carried over into winter ball in Venezuela. I went to winter ball to work, try to figure this out. And it just blew up. And the only way I fixed myself was I had to go to work in the off season after I got released in Venezuela. I thought I was done because I was really struggling at the plate after that injury. But I figured it out in the off season and was able to come back. But I never played a day in the big leagues. I've played many games in, of course, in spring training and big league camp and stuff like that. And I've hit my share of home runs off really good pitchers and faced the best pitchers that are in the Hall of Fame now. So, I learned a lot. The whole moral to that story, Coach and Chris, is that God has a plan for your life. Okay. It was not in his plan for me to play in the major leagues for whatever reason. It was his plan maybe for me to be talking to you right now, maybe helping a kid somehow understand this stuff. And maybe that helps a kid. And that's what I figured out what my purpose was in life was to teach this game. It wasn't to play the game at that level. It's to learn to play in the minor leagues for 12 years and get it stuck up your rear end every way that it can be done and then overcome that to have a pretty solid career. Not many people get to play in the minor leagues for 12 years. Think about that. I would say a 12-year minor league career is 100 times tougher than a 12-year major league career. Because if they ever feel like you're not a prospect, you are stinking done. You're done. You're gone. So I got to play in the minor leagues for 12 years. People think, oh, that's got to be misery. Look, that was my education in baseball to be able to teach what I teach now in the game. And it all worked out really nicely because I've never been motivated by money. If I was, I'd probably be in a mental institution. But I've learned how to live within my means and do what God gave me the ability to do. So the one thing is when things go bad, it may not be bad for the future. All right. There's a verse in the Bible, Romans 8:28, that talks about that. Go read it. It says, all things work for the good for those who love the Lord and who are called according to his purpose. Okay. That's not all good things. That's bad things too. So bad things happen in your life where 5 years, 10 years down the road, you'll look back on that bad thing and that gave you the wisdom to be a better person. So that was actually not a bad thing. That helped you grow as a person. And that was me from my rookie year to by the time I wish I had the maturity at 26 that I had when I was 19. I really do. But I had to live that and learn that. Okay. And it all worked out to be where I am today. And that's a happy baseball guy. And that's all I've ever wanted in my life.
Yeah, no,
Good. Good.
that's really, I think that's really important for players to understand that, you can have the setbacks without a doubt, but you have
Mhm.
to use those setbacks and those obstacles that are placed in your way and use those to your advantage. And I think, it's funny you mentioned that because I remember this back when we coached together down in Florida. It was like the first or second night we were coaching a bunch of free agents, right?
Yeah.
And doing
Good crew, if I remember right. It was a pretty good
it
crew.
was, it was.
A few of those guys
I
signed.
signed, yeah,
Yeah.
I signed the two guys out of that.
Yeah.
And you told that similar story to the group when we had dinner one night, and I think it hit home for a lot of those guys because they were, those guys were they weren't number one picks by any means. They were good players, but they were grinding, trying to get an extra spot and trying to hook on with a club. So that's really important too. And I want to touch base a little bit because you have coached internationally too. So can you
Yes.
tell
Been
yeah,
blessed.
can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, there was an old Saturday Night Live skit. People, I mean, really old. Well, like when Saturday Night Live was actually good. There was a guy named Garrett Morris, and he used to play this character who was a professional baseball player. His name was Chico Escuela. And there was a skit on there, and he would always say, "Baseball been very, very good to me. Baseball been very." He answered every question because he couldn't speak English because he was a Latin ball player. By baseball been very, very good to me. Yeah, that's all he said. And I just that always stuck with me that, yeah, baseball has been very, very good to me. You know what I mean? So I've gotten to go all over the world. My first experience was Venezuela. I played in the Winter League over there, which obviously, Venezuela was not in the shape. Hopefully, we get Venezuela back to where it was when I played there. And that's what all kinds of crud's going on over there. But we've got to make this place the way it was because it was a great place to be. And I don't think you can say that. I mean, they're afraid to send American players there now. Okay, so I believe that's going to come back because it is a phenomenal country. They're phenomenal people, and they love baseball, and they don't deserve what's happened to them. It needs to get back to the way it was in the '80s, and I hope it does because they are great people, and I have many, many friends there, lifelong friends. But man, I've been to Venezuela, I've been to Japan. I just got back from Dubai. That was an experimental winter league they're doing over there, which, hey, I think it's going to eventually be great. What an unbelievable place that place was. I've been to Mexico. I've been to Australia with Team USA. That was a real highlight of my career, being a hitting coach for Team USA that played in the Intercontinental Cup in Sydney right before the 2000 Olympics. So we played Cuba. They were the greatest team in the world at the time, and then our USA team actually beat them in the Olympics, which was, I think, one of our bigger Olympic medals. Being a baseball guy, probably in the history of the Olympics. That was the 2000 when we beat Cuba. But one of my best friends was probably the captain of that team, Pat Borders. We still talk about that series all the time. And kind of the bad blood between the USA and Cuba that spilled onto the field a little bit. The politics kind of carried over to the field there, and it was pretty intense games. I remember watching those, and of course, my buddy Borders was there leading the charge and wanting to whoop some ass. So he was a war dog. This guy spent 16 years in the big leagues and was never as a catcher and was never on the disabled list. He's the MVP of the World Series one year, but probably my best friend in the game. So I got to give him a shout out. But just a tremendous player and a guy that also, you should read his story, a dude that overcame. He was this close to getting released, and he asked them could I try catching because I suck at third base, and it worked out really good for him. So he was probably 2 days from getting released. That's another great story. But I've been able to travel all over the world through baseball, and it's been my whole career has been a blessing. Mac, I think I got 2 or 3 more years left in me, maybe more, who knows, but I'm 63 now. I get to start getting Social Security here when I want sometime, but I'll never truly leave the game. Even if I just am teaching kids lessons, that's good enough for me when I get older.
What are your thoughts, or what can you say to those parents and to those kids to just play for the love of the game through it all? I hear your transition, not playing for the notoriety, not playing for the money, just playing for the love of the game can get you. Do you think that can get you further as far as success versus feeling the pressure of it all?
Listen, I got that question just brings up something that really, you know, it's a situation. I have a family member, a very close family member that dated a kid. She dated this kid for a long time, and he was a phenom. I mean, he was 6'4", 240-pound center fielder that could also throw 96 off the mound, that led the nation in home runs in junior college. I mean, and ran a 6'5", 60. So you're talking about a dude built like Gronkowski running six. I mean, this guy I couldn't even sniff his physical tools. Okay. And this kid had all this ability, all these tools. And guess what? He really didn't like baseball. He was just good at it. He was just really good at it. And he played for one reason and one reason only, and that was to get rich. And let me tell you, it did not work. I'm talking one of the best tools, and I've scouted for 10, 15 years. If I was scouting this guy, I would mark him down as a first round pick, tools wise, easily. But there's something called attitude and makeup, okay, which is the sixth tool that everybody seems to be forgetting about now. So you can have the hitting tool, the speed tool, the defensive tool, the arm tool, and the power tool. You can have all 5 tools. But if you don't have the attitude and makeup to go with that, the most important tool is the sixth tool that nobody talks about. It's attitude and makeup. Is he a good teammate? Does he run balls out? Does he hustle? Does he do everything he can do every time he walks on that field to help his team win a ball game? Okay. And yes, there were a couple of times that I did not do those things when I played. And guess what? I got my little butt set on the bench. All right. I didn't run a ball. I popped a ball up on the infield a mile high with the bases loaded, and I broke my bat, and I jogged to first base because it was the last out the inning. And a man named Dennis Holmberg, who was a legend in the Blue Jays organization, probably has been with the Blue, just retired. All right, 2 years ago, he managed. I'm 63, man. He was my first pro manager, for my first full season pro manager. He put my butt on the bench and he said, "When you want to start running hard again, let me know and I'll play you." And I said, now, I don't want to sit on the bench. He goes, "Well, you're sitting here the rest of the day. And don't forget this." And guess what? I never forgot it. Nobody does that. If if a first round draft pick has got 20 million in the bank and he doesn't run a ball out, he needs a manager on his ass. He needs a manager on his ass to correct that right now. But guess what? That manager's making about 70 grand a year, grinding his butt off in the minor leagues. This guy's got 20 million. I got 60 grand. This guy don't get me fired. Screw that. You know what's right. You know what's wrong. If you're a manager, make them play the game right. Because if you let that crap slide, that's on you in the long run as a manager. And I've managed, I've coached, I've done it all in this game now. And I demand that my guys play hard in independent baseball because you have to be perfect to get to the big leagues these days. You have to. So that is something that should be coached, that is not being coached enough. It's called discipline and playing the game right and demanding that you are a fundamentally sound ball player. First of all, you have to have the ability to teach fundamentals. Okay, we got guys in professional baseball right now that have never worn a jock, that are in a uniform coaching. They can't hit a fungo, but they can read an iPad. Okay, yeah, am I totally against analytics? No, but you can't coach off a freaking iPad. Okay, you got to have somebody that's been 0 for 25 in his career and has overcome that. You were talking about failure early, Coach or Chris, one of you were, and I can tell you everything that I teach in this game is because I've overcome a certain type of failure that is inherent with this game. So you better learn how to deal with failure first and foremost. And if you're giving it all, your all, you're going to fail 70% of the time in the big leagues. If you play for 10 years, if you fail 70% of the time, you're going to be a Hall of Famer. You got a 300 career average. Heck, the batting title winners now hit 310. There's 4 guys in the big leagues hitting 300 when I look in one league or another. I mean, there used to be 30 guys hitting 300, So it's a different game, definitely. But the old stuff still is relevant. And that's what I think we're missing out on in this game.
No, without a doubt. I'm right with you there. And, it's funny too, because I remember sitting with you before my first year managing independent ball, and I was coming from college. So I remember talking with you about, just some tips and things and that's one of the first things that you had said too about, you be the same way, have that same discipline because I was just thinking, oh, maybe you don't have to be as tough or as hard as I was on the guys in college. And you were like, no, you want to be that same way. You want to coach them the same, the hard way. So, that was good for me to hear from someone like you who was managing at the time and had all that experience, going into that. That helped me a lot that first year.
Well, we need more of it. Mac, we need more of it. And it starts in travel ball. Unfortunately, I have to say the word travel ball, okay? Because that's the way it is. Whether I like it or not, I loved American Legion baseball. If it wasn't for American Legion baseball, that was another reason why I had success. Because my dad and my American Legion coach were his name was Daryl Burrows. His 2 sons coached at Cali County Community College. One still does, and they've won multiple national championships at Cali. The Burrows boys there. Darren is still there. Dave is retired, but their dad their dad and my dad was my mentors growing up in the game. It would never be talking to you guys right now if it wasn't for both those guys. And that was an American Legion pro. Well, guess what we did? Guess what we did, Mac? In American Legion baseball, we practiced 4 times a week. Yeah, it's called practice.
No show
I
and
think you
tell, huh?
asked me, what does a kid have to do to make it? He's got to outwork other kids. He's got to out-hit other kids. That freaking PlayStation and that cell phone need to be put the heck up until you get your baseball stuff done if you want to be great. Because if you want that scholarship, all right, there's another kid that's doing the work. That kid will get it. You better outwork that guy, because that's the bottom line in this. Hey, there's a song when I was a kid. It's called "It Don't Come Easy." And I love music. It's an old rock song. And one of the verses in that song is, you gotta pay your dues if you want to sing the blues, because you know it don't come easy. Okay. Exactly the same in sports. All right. If you want to be a rock star, if you want to be Eddie Van Halen on the guitar, ask Eddie Van Halen before he passed away, bless him, how many hours he put in on the guitar. Or Alex, how many hours he put in on the drum to become superstars. It ain't no different in music. It's not any different in sports. And that's why
Hey,
I think
coach.
musicians and athletes have a little bit of a connection there. I've met a lot of musicians that want to be athletes, and I've met a lot of athletes, and I played the guitar when I got released. I wanted to learn the guitar. I had time. I wasn't practicing baseball anymore. I picked up the guitar. And after doing it for 10 years, I can play a few songs. But guys like Eddie Van Halen and Ace Frehley and these guys that are phenomenal guitarists, Clapton and these guys, Jimi Hendrix used to carry a guitar around with him wherever he went. I mean, that's how you become great.
Hey, coach, real quick on that note, real quick. How can you play the hardest game in the world and not practice? Like, that doesn't even make sense. Kids don't understand that to play this game, you have to be really skilled and consistent. And practicing with consistency definitely brings on more success. Can you hit on that a little bit more?
Yes. The word that you use there for greatness in a hitter is consistency. It's muscle memory. It's building every muscle in your body to repeat itself in a correct way without having to think about it. And you have to learn it, and then you have to wear it out. And if you look, practice does not make perfect. All right, if you got a flaw in your swing, for instance, you have this like elbow up, lift the ball. If you've got, that's a flaw to me that some people are teaching now. Okay, that's a flaw. That's a bat that's in and out of the zone. That's not going to create backspin unless you hit it perfect. It's going to create a lot of topspin. But if you have a flaw and you continue to practice with that flaw, you're gonna make that flaw your muscle memory. This is why great coaching, and I don't want to sound like a guy that's trying to get in people's wallets, but I've made more money giving kids hitting lessons. And the reason that I made a lot of money doing that I ever made as a player. And the reason I make money doing that is I get results. And I get results. And I had to raise my prices at one point ridiculously to be able to make a living because I wanted to buy a house. Thought I'd lose clients. I never lost a client. I never lost one. I actually got more because I was the highest charging guy in the facility because I had the best resume. I deserved to make that money. I earned it. I bust my butt with those kids in those lessons. Part of those lessons is teaching them how to practice right, teaching them that they have to practice. And I can tell when a kid practiced or he didn't practice. It's like taking a music lesson. My mom made me take piano lessons. I freaking hated it. I
Same here.
hated it. Hated it. I wanted to be outside hitting rocks. I hit rocks in my driveway like a psychopath for hours when I was a kid. Okay, that's what I wanted to be doing. The piano, hey, I hated it. It sucked. My brother's a concert pianist. He loved it. Me and my brother are opposite. He's artsy. I'm athletic. Okay, we're two totally. He was great at it. I sucked at it. Guess what? You know why I sucked at it? I never practiced at it. Why was I good in baseball? Because instead of doing my piano lessons, I was out of my driveway hitting rocks until the wood bat's barrel was gone. Okay, I didn't have batting cages like these kids had. I had a bunch of rocks in my driveway that I used to throw rocks up and hit them over and over and over and over. And I'm telling you, man, that hand-eye coordinate. The other thing that helped me, I had a kid that took me every day. Nick Vitalo is his name. He's a bat boy for the Mets. Would pick me up every day and take me to play stickball for 3 hours. He was 14, I was 10, and he cut me no slack. He threw sliders. I was trying to hit a tennis ball with a broomstick against a 14-year-old. And by the end of that summer, I was raking him. And I couldn't, he's the reason I learned how to hit, if you want to know the truth, because I did it every day for 3 hours. That is the key. Unless you are a Vladimir Guerrero or a Andrew Jones type talent, which they make those guys, but they make very few of them. They can just show up on a baseball field and be better than everybody. But I coached Vladimir Guerrero Sr. with the Expos, and that dude put the work in. Put the work in. That's why he got in the Hall of Fame way before Andrew Jones, because Andrew Jones maybe didn't put as much work in. And me and my dad used to fight about who the better player was, Andrew Jones or Vladimir Guerrero, because he was with the Braves. I said, I got Vladdy and he had Andrew. And I said, you watch, Dad, Vladdy's going to outwork Andrew. And sure enough, he got in all. And I hope Andrew does. Dad said, Dad was Andrew Jones's outfield coach with the Braves. He said he's the greatest center fielder that's ever played. And he goes, don't forget, I played with Willie Mays. So Andrew belongs in the Hall of Fame. He's an unbelievable talent. But if he'd have worked harder, he could have been one of the greatest that's ever played.
So I know that the last couple of years and now this year, you're going to be a hitting coach again, one of your great joys of coaching, because we talked a little bit
Yeah.
about managing and then just really getting back to your passion about the
Yeah.
hitting coach. So tell us a little bit about where you're going this season and what your expectations are for the team.
Well, number one, let me just say that I have had a love affair with independent baseball since it saved my career in 1993 when I actually played in a league called the Northern League, which is it's actually the league I'm going to be in. It's called the American Association now. When it first started, it was called the Northern League. Okay, they've changed the name. But in 93, they started independent baseball, and I hadn't played in 2 years. And I went back and I played indie ball because I missed it. I wanted to play again. I wanted to compete. Made $1,100 a month. I had 3 kids and a wife. And I told my wife, because she was going to kill me if I went back and played for $1,100 a month, I will send you every cent and I'll figure it out. And I did. I ate a lot of ballpark food that year. Leftovers, ramen noodles, figured it out. I fell in love with indie ball because you had freedom to play the game the way you wanted to play it. And it's still, in my opinion, the last bastion of old school real baseball if you have an old school staff. This staff in Lincoln, Nebraska, where I'm going to be a hitting coach next year, is managed by a guy named James Frisbee, who I've never met anybody, honestly, more like myself. And I actually was in a position to hire him as a manager 25 years ago and give him his first manager's job. And he just got out. He spent the last 5 years in the big leagues. So that was a pretty good find on my part. He's been with the Nationals and Detroit in the big leagues as an assistant hitting coach, left-handed BP guy. And he grinds with those guys in the cage during the games, gets them ready for pinch hits, stuff like that. That was his job in the big leagues the last 5 years. And he works his ass off. He works harder than anybody I've ever met in the game. So I'm going to be his hitting coach. He's going to be the manager. I managed last year. I've got about 3 years left before I retire, and I want to go out enjoying what I do. Managing has gotten to the point where I don't know, man. I can't find pitching anywhere. I could not find pitching anywhere. And it wasn't just my team. It seemed to be in the whole league. And I am sick of managing 24-19 ball games. Okay. That's not baseball to me. And I was getting frustrated. I was getting PO'd at the game, PO'd at the way pitchers are training. They're ruining themselves by the way they train. They have no clue what they're doing. So I have a guy that I signed that's throwing 95. He shows up by June 1st. He's throwing 87 because he's been in some pitching laboratory blowing 95 for 5 months in the offseason when he should be resting. Okay. That's why you're throwing 87 in June. They don't even know this. People have found out ways to make money off these kids, and they are doing it. And these kids are getting brainwashed into things that are crippling their career and not helping them. If you're a pitcher in the offseason, you need to rest. You can chase these pro jobs on these pro days all you want. But what you're doing is you're spending your bullets there when you should save them for the season. So you can be great a whole season, because they're going to sign one guy out of those pro days, and it's some freak like Kenny Serwa that threw a 89, 90 mile an hour knuckleball who's doing great. But that's what they're looking for. If you don't throw 100 or 98 to 100, you go to these pro days and you're ripping 94, 95. Everybody in their organization throws 94, 95. You're wasting your bullets for the season, pal.
Yeah.
And so there is a rash of that going on. 27 of my pitchers got hurt, Mac. I had to go through 44 pitchers last year, never doing it. It made me quit managing. I'm telling you, it made me quit managing. To hell with that. If I'm gonna manage 24 to 19, score was 24 to 19, and we lost one game. We lost. We scored 19 runs and lost. I said, this is not the baseball that I need to be around, because I was getting mad. It's making me not a good person. You know what I mean? I was angry all the time. And I don't want to be angry at the ball, but I'm a competitor and I don't want to get my butt kicked. Okay. I'm in this crap to win it every year. I chase rings. I am a ring whore. Pardon my French, but I am in this to win championships and to win. I do not get any pleasure out of getting my butt kicked. And we were 500 as a team last year, which is supposed to be good. Not for me. 500 may be, oh, he's a 500 manager. Whoop-de-doo. I want to be 58 and 32. That's what I want to be. And I'm not happy unless I am. Sorry, but I want to get back and finish my career with positive vibes. I love my relationships with my players. I want to work with these hitters. I want to kind of take myself out of the competitive mode, because I'm too competitive for this generation. It's that simple.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And that's, it's funny about the pitching thing, because I think a lot right now, social media, is huge. And you see like you said, you see all these places promising gains and velocity, and guys are doing that. But I see him doing it in,
There's a cost.
yeah, December, January, and they're maxing out and they're posting, personal best on throwdown and just running guns. And I'm looking at it, and even with college, I mean, my guys, we used to be off, until mid to late January, like doing regular pens. And knock wood, I never had really a ton of pitchers out, because we were a little more.
I've never seen it before, and it's happening all the time now. I brought an old school pitcher of mine who pitched in the big leagues with the Braves. His name was Gary Eve, a Hall of Famer from Grambling, one of my best friends in the game, just one of the most class human beings, one of my just dear friends in the game. We played on a championship team in '89 in Richmond, LA, and he was a dog, man. He was a dog. So this dude, I flew him in. He flew in to talk to my pitchers, specifically to tell them how to train in the off. He said he did not pick up a ball and throw a ball off a mound until 1 month before spring training started. He wanted to be peaking day one of spring training. These guys are peaking in December and January. All right. If you do that, think about this as you're in a war. All right. You're in the old West and you're going to have a gunfight with a bunch of bank robbers, and you got a holster with these bullets. When you're out of bullets, it's over. Okay. It's over. You're dead. All right. So you have to conserve your bullets. Pitchers need to think like that. You got so many bullets in this arm, and you better conserve them to where you are peaking for the season, because if you're not throwing 100, 98 to 100, you don't even need to go to a pro day, because they ain't signing nobody nowadays. Okay. I've scouted for 10 years too. We used to sign 6, 7 guys out of our D-backs tryout camp. We've signed one in the last 2 or 3 years. That's contraction of baseball. That's what causes that. But if you're if you're chasing that major league dream in January, February, March, and airing it out then, forget about having anything in June or July. If you're throwing 93, 94, you got to put up a whole season of dominance.
Hey, Coach,
yeah.
to piggyback on that, quick question. When we talk about strength and conditioning as far as these players, how stringent is that, and how do you feel about that preparation as far as their strengthening of their bodies, more than just, and it being sports specific, more than just actually just that those reps that have to be in? Do you feel like the strength and conditioning is more of a focus, or reps needs to be more of a focus?
I think it's depending on the individual player. I was a guy when I signed that need massive amounts I needed to put on muscle. Okay. I was skinny. I mean, if you look at my early baseball cards, I think I might have made me and Barry Bonds before he rubbed the cream on himself. Might have looked a very butt off in the gym. But if I was built like Ronnie Gant, Ron Gant, who played for the Braves, this guy, or Bo Jackson. I mean, Bo Jackson, God just said, Bo, you're going to have it all, baby. If I had a body like Bo Jackson, I would have never lifted weights. All right. That's naturally inherent athleticism and strength that guy was blessed with. Now, I'm sure he worked his butt off too, like Herschel Walker, but never did any weights. He did push-ups, sit-ups, drug tires. He did it old school. Look at his body. He's still in the best shape of anybody his age, probably in America. So heavy weightlifting, like there's a lot of this heavy weightlifting that I think really injures players. And one of them is called a power clean. Okay. That is a very dangerous exercise that all these coaches have these that are leading to back fractures. And you better do that crap right. Look, if you work your butt off in the sport you're in, you will inherently get stronger in that sport. Look, I was 165 pounds and I could hit a ball 450 feet because I knew how to hit and knew how to maximize everything my body could do. And I learned that at a young age, blessed by having a major leaguer for a father and having some good genetics. I do have decent genes. Like I said, my dad was a freak athlete. I can't carry his jock, by the way. But anyway, you have to be self-aware of what you need as an athlete. All right. If you're struggling, let me just put it to you this way, coach. This is a real easy way to remember this. Whatever you struggle at, whatever you stink at, is what you need to pound, is what you need to work on. You have to be self-aware. If you can't hit a breaking ball, hit 1,000 million breaking balls. Okay. If you can't hit velocity, crank that hack attack senior up to 98 and start hitting that. Don't just do soft toss and hit off a tee. Get off. If you can't hit velo in a game, it's telling you need to hit velo in practice. And they got these hack attack machines now that blow noise. There is no excuse, okay, with the technology we have and the facilities that we have out there not to be great. But you have to be self-aware. If you're 145 pounds and you want to play in the big leagues, you better hit the weights. You better eat right. You better pound those calories. Because I can tell you for a fact, I've done both. It's way harder to gain weight than it is to lose weight. Okay. I've been up to 260 at one point in my life, and I'm 220 now, where I need to be. I wish I was 220 when I played. I had a very high metabolism. It was very hard for me to keep weight on during the season too. But I think there's too much lifting going on during the season. You're breaking your muscles down before the game. If you want to lift after the game and do light reps. You build in the off season, you maintain. You can do 100 push-ups and 100 setups and maintain whatever you did in the weight room that off season. That's what I did.
I would prefer that guys do endurance training during the season if they do anything versus
Absolutely.
versus strength training or powerlifting or anything like that. They don't need to be doing that during the season.
Those power cleans are leading to more back fractures. When a kid comes in and says, I got a fractured back, the first thing I said, did you do a power clean? 90% of the time, it's yes, sir. They did a power clean, but they did it wrong. That's a very dangerous exercise that everybody's doing in high schools now. You got to do them right or you're going to blow your back out, man.
Yeah.
Common sense has got to take over here somewhere.
They need the old school guys like us. Hey, Cash, it's been great talking with you, man. We're running out of time here, and I want to really thank you for taking the time. I know we could probably stay on here for a while and just talk baseball.
Dude.
Forget what it was, 20 or 30 days down in Florida. That was awesome, man. I learned a lot from a lot of guys, all the coaches that we had, and playing the organizational teams and the stories. It just we did a bunch of clinics together too. Cash and I did some clinics together. We had a blast, and always enjoyed and still do talking with you about baseball and just.
Well, anytime, pal. It's a pleasure to talk about the game that's put every meal I've ever eaten in my life on the table for me. Yes, I say that. And Mac, I'm gonna say I've learned stuff from you too now. The vision stuff that you teach is there's another thing I wish I had when I was 15, 16 years old, is that I think I could have been a better player. I really, and I had really good eyesight. Not as much now as you can. But anyway, I got Joe Madden glasses, so maybe I could win him as many as he has. But anyway, Mac, you do a great job. And you guys, I know Coach Rock, you do a great job too. And I thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning
Thank
in.
you.
Again, All-Star Insights, sponsored by Kids on First Foundation and Tuckahoe Sports. And we'll catch you at the next episode.
Thank you guys. Have a good one.